Have you ever noticed how the hardest chains to break are the ones you can't see? Not the obvious addictions, not the dramatic habits everyone warns you about. The invisible ones. The comfortable patterns that feel so natural, you forget they're even there. You tell yourself you'll change tomorrow. You mean it when you say it. But tomorrow comes, and the same gravitational pull brings you back. Back to the familiar screen. Back to the same conversation. Back to the routine that requires nothing new from you. And here's what makes it strange. You're not even enjoying it anymore. But you keep returning. Most people think comfort becomes addictive because humans are naturally lazy. Because we're wired to conserve energy. Because we're avoiding the hard work of growth. That explanation feels true enough to repeat. But it completely misses the mechanism. The real question isn't why you choose comfort. The real question is, what is comfort doing for you emotionally that nothing else can match? Let me tell you what comfort actually is. Comfort isn't a place you go to relax. It's not the couch, the bed, or the familiar routine. Comfort is an emotional transaction. Your nervous system is constantly monitoring threat levels. Uncertainty registers as threat. Novelty registers as threat. Being seen differently than you see yourself registers as threat. And your brain has one primary job: keep you regulated. Comfort is the fastest route back to baseline. It's not about pleasure. It's about the absence of tension. Think about the last time you had a difficult conversation ahead of you, or a decision you needed to make, or a project that required you to stretch beyond what felt natural. What did you do right before? You probably scrolled, or checked something familiar, or reorganized something that didn't need organizing. That wasn't procrastination. That was your nervous system reaching for regulation. And here's what your brain learned in that moment. This pattern lowers activation. Not forever, not completely, but enough. And enough is all your brain needs to encode a pathway. Let me show you how this works in real time. You wake up with intention. Today feels different. You're going to start that thing you've been postponing. The first hour goes fine, maybe even energizing. Then something shifts. It's not dramatic, just a slight increase in internal pressure. A thought that feels too big. A choice that has too many implications. A moment where you're not sure what the next right step is. Your system registers this as load. And before you consciously decide anything, your attention drifts. Not to something exciting, to something known. You check the same app you checked 10 minutes ago. You rearrange your workspace. You suddenly remember something that needs researching right now. This isn't weakness. This is your brain doing exactly what it learned to do. Find the fastest route back to calm. And comfort delivers. Every single time. Here's the part that makes comfort so uniquely powerful. It doesn't promise transformation. It doesn't ask you to become someone new. It doesn't require proof or performance. Comfort offers something most people don't consciously recognize they're craving. Emotional predictability. And that predictability comes packaged in 4 specific rewards. These aren't benefits you think about. They're benefits your nervous system feels. And feeling is faster than thinking. Emotional reward 1. Certainty in an uncertain system. Your brain is always calculating risk. Not just physical risk. Emotional risk. Social risk. Identity risk. Every new situation contains variables your brain can't fully predict. What will people think? What if I fail? What if I succeed and can't sustain it? What if this changes how I see myself? These questions create activation. Comfort removes the questions. When you return to the familiar pattern, your brain knows exactly what happens next. The same show you've watched before. The same conversation you've had a dozen times. The same environment that requires no adjustment. There's no surprise. No adaptation needed. No recalibración. And to a nervous system that's already managing 1,000 inputs, that certainty feels like relief. Not joy. Relief. And relief is one of the most reinforcing emotions your brain can experience. Emotional reward 2. Identity preservation. Here's something most people never consider. Growth requires grief. Not the kind of grief that comes from loss. The kind that comes from letting go of who you were. Every time you step into something new, you're also stepping away from someone familiar. The version of you that didn't do this thing. The version that stayed small, stayed safe, stayed consistent. That version feels like you, and your brain is deeply invested in maintaining a coherent sense of self. Comfort lets you stay inside the identity you already know. No transition. No moment where you're between versions. No risk of discovering you're not who you thought you were. You get to remain recognizable. To yourself. To others. And that stability feels safe in a way most people never name. When you choose comfort, you're not just avoiding effort. You're protecting continuity. Emotional reward 3. The elimination of demand. Let me describe a feeling you've definitely had. You're capable. You know you're capable. But the thought of proving it again feels exhausting. Not because the task is hard. Because being on requires something from you. Attention. Precision. The performance of competence. Even when you're good at something, doing it still creates demand. Comfort removes demand entirely. No one's watching. No one's evaluating. Nothing needs to be better than it was yesterday. You can just exist without output. And for a brain that's constantly managing expectations, your own and others, that absence of demand feels like oxygen. You're not being lazy. You're being unburdened. And your nervous system registers that as reward. Emotional reward 4. Emotional volume control. This is the one most people miss entirely. Comfort doesn't solve your problems. It doesn't make the hard thing easier. It doesn't resolve the tension you're carrying. What it does is quieter. It turns down the volume on emotional activation. Think of your nervous system like a sound system. Throughout the day, different inputs turn up different frequencies. Stress raises the volume. Uncertainty raises it. Responsibility raises it. Being visible raises it. By evening, you're not listening to music anymore. You're listening to noise. Comfort doesn't change the song. It just lowers the gain. That scroll through your phone? It's not interesting, but it's rhythmic enough to occupy your attention. That familiar show? You're not even watching closely, but it's predictable enough to let your guard down. That routine you repeat without thinking? It doesn't add anything to your life, but it doesn't ask anything either. And that softening, that slight reduction in internal volume, feels like relief. Your brain doesn't distinguish between solving a problem and making it quieter. Both feel like progress, and the one that's faster wins. Now here's where this gets interesting. You probably recognize all 4 of these rewards. But recognition doesn't break the pattern, because comfort isn't operating at the level of thought. It's operating at the level of sensation. Your brain isn't asking, should I choose comfort? It's feeling, this will lower the load. And by the time you're aware of the choice, the pattern is already in motion. So the question isn't how to fight comfort. The question is, how do you create enough space between stimulus and response to actually choose? Here's what that space looks like. The next time you feel the pull toward comfort, don't resist it. Don't shame it. Don't try to willpower your way past it. Just pause for 10 seconds. Not to decide differently, just to notice. And ask yourself one question. What is this about to make quieter? Not what you're avoiding. Not what you should be doing instead. Just name the feeling that comfort is about to soften. Maybe it's, this will make the uncertainty quieter. Or, this will make the pressure to perform go away for a minute. Or, this will let me stop thinking about that decision. You're not judging it. You're just naming it. And that naming does something crucial. It moves you from inside the pattern to outside it. You're no longer unconsciously seeking regulation. You're consciously observing the need for it. And observation changes the circuitry. Here's what most people get wrong about breaking comfort addiction. They think the goal is to stop choosing comfort. But comfort isn't the problem. Comfort is information. It's showing you where your system feels overloaded. It's showing you what your brain is trying to regulate. It's showing you which emotional experiences you haven't learned to tolerate yet. When you fight comfort, you miss the signal. When you notice it, you gain leverage. Not because you force yourself to choose differently, but because you understand what you're actually choosing. Comfort loses its automatic pull the moment you see it clearly. Not because it stops working, but because you stop needing it to be invisible. So let me ask you directly, where does comfort show up most in your life? Not as judgment, as curiosity. What pattern do you return to when the volume gets too loud? What does that pattern make quieter? And what would it mean to let yourself feel that volume, even for a moment longer? You don't have to answer out loud, but the question itself creates space. And space is where choice lives. Comfort isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. Pay attention to what it's trying to tell you.